A warm good evening to everyone and a heartfelt welcome to today's discussion organized by Talking Films Online, also known as TFO. My name is Tanmay and I am your host for today's discussion. TFO began its journey with Professor Nikhil and Dr. Gita Vishwanath in June 2020 during the lockdown. Over the years, TFO has metamorphosed from a spontaneous idea into an expanding community of cinephiles encompassing scholars, researchers, students, professors, filmmakers, and anyone passionate about cinema. We are delighted to have sustained this forum thanks to you who gather every Saturday at 9 p.m. as per Indian Standard Time on Zoom to talk about cinema. It has been TFO's practice to invite individuals to select and lead discussions on chosen films, which participants are free to watch at their own time and place. TFO has the pleasure of hosting eminent filmmakers, professors, scholars, and cinematographers like Apan Nashen, Amal Palekar, Girish Kasharavalli, and Adu Gopalakrishnan. Our journey has also included film festivals such as South Asian, East European, Iranian, Women's Cinema, among others. Every June, TFO hosts a smartphone short filmmaking contest for students and organizes a lecture series in university departments to commemorate its anniversary. In September 2024, we organized our first offline event, an international seminar on Indian cinema in the digital era, in collaboration with FCT Baroda. Last year, we also organized our second international conference in hybrid mode titled Screen to Street, Decoding Cinema in Everyday Life, in collaboration with Banwarilal Bhalotia College, Asansol, West Bengal. For tonight's discussion, we'll focus on the Kannada film Kantara, A Legend, Chapter 1, directed by Rishab Shetty. The film has been chosen by Dr. Emelia Noronha, who will also lead today's discussion. It is my great pleasure to introduce Emelia ma'am, who currently serves as an associate professor and head of the Department of Business Communication and IQAC coordinator at Prahlad Dalmia Alliance College of Commerce and Economics, Mumbai. Her research interests include digital media, gender studies, autobiography, and blogging. A recipient of multiple Best Paper Awards, Emilia ma'am has published extensively in reputed journals. We are truly honored to have ma'am with us today, and we look forward to an engaging and thought-provoking discussion. Now, I am handing over this mic to Emilia ma'am. Ma'am, the dais is open for you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Tanmay. And let me share my screen, and please let me know if it is visible. 1 second. Yeah, is it visible?
Yes, ma'am. It is.
Yeah, okay. So, good evening, everyone. We are here to discuss the movie Kantara, Chapter 1, the Indian Kannada language epic mythological action drama film, co-written and directed by Rishab Shetty, produced by Vijay Kira Gandur and Chaluva Gowda under Hombole Films. The focus of the film is on the clash between the Kantara tribe, led by Burma, that is Rishab Shetty, Burmese Rishab Shetty, and the newly crowned Bangra king, Kulashekara, that is played by Gulshan Devaya. The film explores, we can say, elements of faith, power, and tradition, which collide on screen, offering a layered story of identity and belonging. We have a collision of folklore and politics where religion, land, and power overlap. And all this happens with the forest of Tulunada as the backdrop and also an essential element of the story. We are led to the coastal belt of Tulunada where myth walks beside man, and deep inside the forest lies the forest which is known as God's garden, Ishwarana Huta. Guarded by the Daivas, we have Panjurli, the boar spirit, and Guliga, their fierce guardian, The forest is sacred, and the tribal community that lives there treats it not as a land, but as living ancestry. Thus, the film sees a collision at three levels: the political, the spiritual, the cinematic. At the political level, the land is looked upon as one that renders one an identity and also ownership as pride. At the spiritual level, ritual is experienced as truth and not superstition. And at the cinematic level, one can say that myth is rendered as a spectacular, muscular spectacle in a way. The core of the spiritual aspect of Kantara is the Bhutakola. The Bhutakola, or the Bhuta Aradhane as it is called, these are performance-based rituals invoking spirits, ancestors, heroes, animal deities, forest deities, mountain deities, earth deities, and tribal guardian deities. It is native to the Tuluvas and the Tulu culture in Dakshin Kannada and Udupi districts in Karnataka and Kasaragod district in Kerala. The Bhutas, known as the Daivas, are semi-divine spirits, distinct from gods and humans. Dr. Purushottama Bilamale, a recipient of many honors, including the Karnataka Folklore Academy Award, notes that there are 600 Bhutas in the Karavali stretch. Each of these Bhutas has a narrative known as Padanas, which are epic folklores that give the details of the birth or the origin of the Bhuta. Reiterating the difference between gods and Bhutas, we have Dr. Bilamale stating one thing that distinguishes these gods from the Bhutas, rather, from the Vedic gods is that these heroes are not a reincarnation of any gods. That is, the Vedic and Hindu gods, when born, are incarnations of another existing god. They are achievers by birth because they are born to fulfill a certain prophecy. But the Bhutas, he asserts, are individuals who grew up in a society that was tough for them because of their birth in a backward community. Certain conflicts resulted in their early death or disappearance, which is not the case for Vedic gods, who attain moksha only after fulfilling their birth prophecy. Thus, it is very important to know that the Bhutas are not born to fulfill any prophecy or achieve something according to Bilamale, but they are individuals who are revered as Bhutas only after their death. Each of these Bhutas are distinct and govern a particular aspect of life for which they are revered. Their shrines are found outside many local homes in the coastal stretch of Karavali. They exist in different forms and shapes, such as the animal form Bhutas. We have Panjurli, a boar. We have Pilechamunda, a tiger, or Nandigona, a bull. We also have Bhutas like Anappa, Alibhuta, Kalakuda, Gobarya, Kodabbu, Kora, Koti, Chanaya. These are all male. While we have Kallurti, Dei Badiyati, Tani Maniga. Almost all the names ending with Tai are female. Tai, Kannada word meaning mother. Very importantly, some are androgynous, Ardhanareshwar, with a male head and a female body, known as you have Jumadi Bhuta. Fishermen offer prayers to Bobaria before leaving an expedition. It is very important to note something about Bobaria. Bobaria is a revered protected sea spirit or deity in Tulunadu, often seen as a symbol of brotherhood originating from tales of shipwreck survivor who became a powerful spirit, sometimes linked to an Arab traveler, and worshipped by fishing communities, that is, the Mugaviras, highlighting the region's inclusive spiritual traditions, where diverse figures achieve divine status. His stories, part of Bhutakola rituals, involve conflicts with other stories, demonstrating his might and earning him worship for protection, safe journeys, and well being. He is known as the guardian spirit of the sea, protecting fishermen and travelers. Bobaria symbolizes brotherhood and inclusivity, uniting different communities like Mogaviras, Bilavas, and the Biari Muslims in Tulunadu. The worship of Bobaria exemplifies the unique syncretism in Tulu culture, honoring spirits from diverse backgrounds, including those with perceived Muslim origins alongside Hindu deities. We have Panjali, also known as Guliga, as seen in the movie Kantara, who protects farms from wild bulls. It is also important to note that these bhutas or daivas transcend caste, religion, serving as practical protectors of livelihood, forests, and communities. One of the most captivating aspects of the Bhuta Kola, or also known as Bhuta Aradhane, is the reciting of the padanas that are long Tulu verses recited before and during the ritual that recount the deeds of the deities and preserve the community history. A.C. Burnell in Indian Antiquary, volume 23 in 1894, first recorded these epic songs and the 600 names of the Bhutas, along with the transliteration and translation of several Tulu padanas. The Devil Worship of the Tuluvas, written by A.C. Burnell again, it was the first English work on Tulu padanas. The colonial Christian-centric perspective that looked down upon indigenous religious practices of the East is evident from the term that he used, that is devil worship. But very importantly, one should note that Bhutakola is a sacred art form. It has nothing to do with devil worship. Bhuta means the spirit here, and it helps you to understand the sincerity and the greatness of the Tulu Nadu. Yet, this work is still very important as it has archived the ritual of Bhuta Aradhane, that is spirit possession that places the human body at the center of meaning making. The possessed performer, known as the Daiva Patri, the divine vessel, becomes a medium through which justice is articulated, grievances are heard, and ethical order is restored within the community. It is important to note that the Daiva Patri is always a person from the lowest strata of society, a Dalit. It is on the occasion of the Bhuta Aradhane, the affordances of the place, time, and context of the ritual, which brings people of all castes together for the worship. When the Bhuta or the Daiva blesses the Brahmin landlord as well as the others from the lowly caste. Thus, the ritual is a complex ideology. It is a mystery. But there is a message behind masks of the Bhutas. It signifies the fight against injustice and exploitation in society. It is a fight against denial of social justice by upper class to the suppressed class of society. The different actions of the Daiva Patri in the performance situation, like exaggerated shouts, swallowing fire, wounding himself with sword, walking on a heap of embers, signify impatience against injustice and exploitation. I quote the words of Professor K. Chinappa Gowda, a senior researcher on Tulu folklore and Bhuta worship. Thus, the Bhuta Aradhane is not a performance, but a spiritual experience for believers of Tulu Nadu. Therefore, we had Rishab Shetty, who played the role of Burme, who urged his fans not to imitate the Daiva, as it distorts the spiritual essence that it carries. The infamous mimicking of the Kantara Act by Ranveer Singh led to an uproar and later his apology. Thus, one can deduce that Bhutakola reflects a relational worldview where humans, animals, spirits, ancestors, and elements of the natural world coexist within a shared moral and social universe. In Bhutakola, rituals, animal deities, forest spirits, earth and mountain deities, ancestral spirits, all are not treated merely as symbols or metaphors. Instead, they are understood as active life forces that directly intervene in human affairs. This challenges the anthropocentric tendency to project only human values onto animals or reduce them to myths. Instead, the ritual acknowledges non human agencies as possessing power, voice, and authority. From a post human perspective, Bhutakola can be seen as an example of Braidoti's zoocentric ethics, where life in all its forms, whether human, animal, ecological, and spiritual, is respected and interconnected. The Daiva Patri performer, through embodied performance, trance, and ritual speech, there is a process of co individuation where human and non human identities temporarily merge. This creates a space for cross species and cross domain communication, something largely absent in modern human animal relations. the village or the family in a typical Bhoot Aradhane come together to seek guidance over a family affair or dispute and respect the decisions made by the Bhuta. Each Bhuta is believed to govern a particular aspect of human welfare and are prayed to accordingly. The selection of the person to act as a medium for the Bhuta also differs in different places. Sometimes people may not even realize that they are a medium. Small rituals are carried out if someone falls sick or has an accident, or even if they have dreamt something unusual. The Daiva Patri goes through various rituals before he actually gets ready for acting as the medium. Um, and you often have the Daiva Patri taking a bath first near the well in the which consists of, tightly fitted trousers, then the vermilion colored sari, has a dhoti, and most important is the jeji, the gungru that are tied to their ankles. Holding a bunch of areca flowers, they stand in the puja station or circle created for them. After the musical instrument is played on a high note, a small aarti is offered to the priest, and then the atmosphere changes. With the loud sound of the instrumental music and the aarti, in a few minutes, you have the Daivapatri's legs starting to shake and they rub the areca flowers on their face in a circular motion. After the full possession, the Daivapatris situate themselves in a chair or a standing position close to their idol. And at this point, the family members and other people start seeking advice. There is always an intermediary person between the Bhutas and the people, because sometimes the Bhutas talk in different languages or variations of the language, which might be difficult for one to understand. Uh, so you have these intermediaries translating what the Bhuta has to say to the local people. Very importantly, I would suggest to watch the documentary Kola by Deepak Hegde to get a deeper insight into Bhuta Aradhane. While earlier myths and fables often de-animalize animals by turning them into moral symbols, Bhutakola moves closer to what post-humanism calls deep relationality. The ritual does not merely imagine animals and spirits through human categories, but attempts to engage with their specific life worlds through embodied practice, oral narratives, and affective exchange. In this sense, Bhutakola functions as a form of post-human fictioning, where ritual performance acts as a mode of translation between human and non-human worlds. Thus, Bhutakola offers a culturally grounded example of how post-humanist ideas of relational subjectivity, non-human agency, and ethical coexistence, which have been embedded in Indian indigenous ritual practices long before they entered contemporary theory. Uh, the movie Kantara, chapter 1, captures the essence of the Bhutaradhane in all its spirituality. And thus, the iconic guttural voicing of the vow in Kantara is a reverberating, raw, and emotionally charged expression of divinity, a literal and metaphorical voice of the Deva. The soul stirring spectra is captivatingly rendered with great technical and emotional finesse, thereby charging the atmosphere with an awe and wonder for indigenous spirituality, making audiences feel frozen and immersed. Thus, the movie gripped its audience all over the country with a reverence towards the deeply rooted indigenous narrative, thereby prioritizing cultural authenticity over universal commercial appeal. The movie has managed to evoke a primal response, a transition from fear to faith in the audience with regards to our indigenous narratives that were hitherto dismissed as primitive superstition. I would here like to bring in pertinent ideas from Deleuze and Guattari's chapter on how do you make yourself a body without organs. And I have this particular piece in mind, and I would like to read it for you, though it is a little large piece. Dismantling the organism has never meant killing yourself, but rather opening the body to connections that presuppose an entire assemblage. Circuits, conjunctions, levels and thresholds, passages and distributions of intensity, and territories and deterritorizations measured with the craft of a survey. Actually, dismantling the organism is no more difficult than dismantling the other two strata, significance and subjectification. Significance clings to the soul, just as the organism clings to the body. And it is not easy to get rid of either. And how can we unhook ourselves from the points of subjectification that secure us, nail us down to a dominant reality? Tearing the conscious away from the subject in order to make it a means of exploration, tearing the unconscious away from the significance and interpretation in order to make it a veritable production. This is assuredly no more or no less difficult than tearing the body away from the organism. Caution is the art common to all three. If in dismantling the organism, there are times one courts death, in slipping away from significance and subjection, one courts falsehood, illusion, and hallucination, and psychic death. To put it plainly, when Deleuze and Guattari talk about dismantling the organism, they do not mean harming or killing the body. They mean letting go of the idea that the body has only fixed roles and rigid functions. Instead of seeing the body as a closed machine, they want us to see it as as something open, capable of forming new connections with other people, forces, emotions, ideas, environments, and energies. The body in this view works as a part of a larger network or assemblage made of many connections, intensities, and movements. These connections have different levels, limits, and rhythms, and they constantly change. Understanding the body requires care, attentiveness, like a surveyor carefully mapping the land. There are two other forces as well, which the body is trapped under. Number one is significance, that is the habit of forcing everything to have a fixed meaning or interpretation. And the second is subjectification, the way we are locked into a stable idea of who we are, like this is me or this is my role. And very important it is to break free from these traps. And breaking free means using consciousness not to defend a fixed identity, but to explore new ways of thinking and being. Secondly, using the unconscious, not as something to be endlessly interpreted, but as a source of creativity and production, allowing the body to move beyond fixed functions into new possibilities of experience. But this process has to be done very carefully, because if one pushes too far, then one risks physical harm to the body. And with meaning, one can risk confusion or illusion or false beliefs. And with identity, there is this risk of psychological breakdown or loss of grounding. So we have Deleuze and Guattari encouraging us to loosen rigid ideas about the body, meaning, and self, not to destroy them, but to make them more flexible and open to new ways of living. This requires care, balance, and awareness, because freedom without caution can lead to harm or confusion. I find one can map a kind of connection between Deleuze and Guattari's ideas and Bhuta possession, that is the indigenous ritual embodiment. In Bhuta Kola, we have what Deleuze and Guattari call dismantling the organism. It enacted, we have dismantling of the organism ritually enacted and temporarily, not violently or destructively. The possessed body does not cease to function biologically, but it loosens its ordinary organization. The everyday rules, habits, gestures, and identities of the performer are suspended. The body becomes free, open to forces beyond the individual self. During the performance, rather the possession, I would say, the performer's body, the patri's body, enters into an assembly that includes the Bhuta spirit, ritual objects, music, landscape, community, ancestry, and emotion. Voice, movement, and perception change because the body is no longer acting as a closed individual organism, but as a conduit for circulating intensities. This directly mirrors Deleuze-Guattari's idea of opening the body to new connections, thresholds, and flows. At the same time, Bhuta position also involves a temporary dismantling of subjectification. The performer is no longer treated as a personal individual, but as the Bhuta himself or the Daiva itself. Everyday identity is set aside. The speech is no longer personal opinion, but divine utterance. This reflects Deleuze and Guattari's call to loosen fixed subject positions that nail us down to a dominant reality. Significantly, Bhuta rituals are governed by strict rules, rhythms, and limits, which aligns with Deleuze Guattari's insistence on caution. The opposition is carefully controlled through music, costume, space, and ritual timing. This prevents physical harm, psychological disorientation, or social chaos. The body is opened to divine intensity, but only within a culturally stabilized framework. Thus, Bhuta possession demonstrates how dismantling the organism does not mean chaos or self destruction. Instead, it shows how indigenous ritual knowledge has long understood the need to balance openness with structure. The body becomes a site of exploration and transformation, yet remains anchored through ritual discipline. In this way, Bhuta embodiment enacts a lived indigenous form of what Deleuze and Guattari theorize as a body without organs, a body opened to relational becoming, but handled with care. Um, I would like to bring in another important concept put forth by Deleuze and Guattari. On page 164 of the same chapter from A Thousand Plateaus, Capitalism and Schizophrenia. And I would like to read out the passage. The egg is the milieu of pure intensity, statium, not extinction. Zero intensity as principle of production. There is a fundamental convergence between science and myth, embryology and mythology, the biological egg and the psychic or cosmic egg. The egg always designates this intensive reality, which is not undifferentiated, but is where things and organs are distinguished solely by gradients, migrations, zones of proximity. To make connections, when Deleuze and Guattari talk about the egg, they are not just referring to a biological object, using it as a metaphor to explain how life form and difference come into being. The egg for me represents a space of pure potential energy, not a finished body with fixed parts, and it is not empty either. Instead, it is a field of intensities, differences in energies, pressure, movement, and force. And this space is called spatial. Differences, energy, pressure, movement, and force. Zero intensity does not mean nothingness. It means a starting point from which differences begin to emerge. From this point, forms, organs, and structures slowly develop. The egg is not undifferentiated chaos. Even before organs form, there are gradients. Cells move, energies flow, zones of closeness form, organs emerge. The idea brings together science and myth. In embryology, the biological egg develops through gradients and cellular movements. In mythology, many cultures speak of a cosmic or a psychic egg from which the universe or consciousness is born. Both point to the same idea. Creation begins not from fixed forms, but from intensive potential. To relate Guattari's concept of the egg as a field of intensities to Kantara chapter 1, we must move from philosophy to mythic cinema. The forest as the spatium, the intensive space. Right in the opening chapter, we have the king entering the forest seeking peace. What he encounters is not merely land, but a charged field of presence. The deity, the forest, the silence, the tremor of something unseen. This mirrors Deleuze Guattari's idea of egg as spatium, The forest is not yet a political property. It is not a mapped territory. It is an intensive field of forces, divine energy, ancestral presence, ecological vitality. Like the egg, it is not empty chaos, but structured by gradients, sacred versus the profane, human desire versus cosmic will, greed versus surrender. Before ownership, before law, before conflict, there is intensive potential. Secondly, we have the deity as a zero intensity. When Deleuze and Guattari speak of zero intensity, they don't mean nothingness, but a generative threshold, the point from which difference begins. In Kantara, we have the Varaha deity appearing as a silent, overwhelming force, yet there is no narrative conflict, not yet, no historical injustice yet, pure cosmic presence. The zero intensity is the starting point, and from this moment emerge the land covenant, the community's identity, the later conflict between the state and indigenous cosmology, Shiva's eventual transformation. The entire narrative is already folded in this initial intensity, almost like organs folded into an egg. Gradients before the form. And so these are the gradients before the form. Many mythologies speak of a cosmic egg from which the universe emerges. And we have Kantara chapter 1 that functions similarly. The forest is the womb, a cosmic egg, a pre-political universe. The Bhuta presence or the Varaha presence is not a symbol of decoration. It is the intensive core from which social order crystallizes. You have, just like the delusion egg producing organs, you have the cosmic egg producing the universe. The forest intensity produces land ethics, ritual economy, ancestral obligation, spiritual sovereignty. These are the gradients before the form. The king's interest leading to spiritual tremor, the forest silence bringing in sacred pressure, the deity's presence giving directional force. And we have Shiva as the delayed differentiation. If chapter 1 is the egg, Shiva is the latent organ, exists within the field of intensities. He's a half believer, half rebel, body without spiritual formation, energy without direction. It's only in the climax you have differentiation complete, when Shiva becomes the embodiment of the very intensity that opened the film. The egg has finally actualized its gradients. We have science, myth, and Kantara coming together. Just as Deleuze collapses the boundary between embryology and myth, Kantara does the same. Embryology, you have gradients creating organs. In myth, we have cosmic energy creating worlds. And here with this cinema, we have intensity creating narrative becoming. Kantara chapter 1, I would say, is not just an exposition, it is cosmogenesis. A mythic egg where cosmic energy precedes property, politics, and identity. The forest is not background. It is the intensive field from which life, conflict, ritual, and transformation emerge. Just as life develops from gradients in an egg, Kantara's world develops from the gradients of cosmic energy introduced in Kantara first chapter. Well, in conclusion, I would say that Kantara offers a compelling, culturally specific reinterpretation of post-humanist ideas, demonstrating that indigenous epistemologies have long held the keys to understanding a world beyond human exceptionalism. The film's spiritual core provides a non-secular alternative to Western post-humanism, grounded in a reciprocal and sacred relationship with the natural world rather than a technologically mediated one. I would say Bhutakola isn't a show, it's a dialogue between belief and belonging, land and legend, human and divine. With that, I would like to seize my discussion. These are some trajectories that I would like to put forth for research and discussion. The element introduced by the Kadapa tribe, The fictional antagonistic clan depicted as a fearsome blackface group deep in the forest, portrayed as practitioners of black magic, seeking to misuse the powers of the Daiva and control Ishvara's garden of bloom. So the next is the relationship that transgresses social boundaries. Burme, a lower caste tribal individual, his relationship with the princess belonging to the higher caste. The third aspect that requires discussion, further discussion, would be a justification with regards to whether Kantara Chapter 1 is a technical marvel or is it a divine rush. Another very problematic concept that one needs to delve into and research would be the Brahma Kalasha ceremony, a very critical multi-layered plot device that drives both the narrative development and the cultural, thematic, and social dynamics of the film. The cinematic it gives the cinematic and artistic expression a great high, blending music, devotion, and it actually adds on to the film's overall high impact storytelling. But there are a lot of questions that one needs to ask. And lastly, how does one resolve the climax? And as research indicates, the Bhutas worshipped by the locals, they're quite different. And how do they become part of the big three, that is the Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva? With those questions, I leave you. These are my references. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for such a wonderful and informative discussion on the film Kantara. Now the dais is open for everyone, and I will request others to please come up with your questions and comments if you have any.
Well, that was my take. I am not sure whether I will be really, I can take up questions. We can have a discussion. That would
Yes,
be,
ma'am, sure.
because I just put forth my study, rather I would say, on the movie, and the movie lends itself to so many different trajectories, and I guess there will be so many perspectives, and people will bring in their own ideas. So definitely, a discussion is something that I think is the objective of our talk today.
Yeah. May I comment on my?
Yes, ma'am,
Yes.
please.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Emelia, for that really scholarly presentation. Yeah, I saw the film as, depicting conflicting worldviews. On the one hand, you have the indigenous worldview in which nature is sacred and humans are, custodians of this sacred land. And on the other hand, you have the modern worldview where nature is seen as a resource to be, exploited for human profit. And humans are not exactly custodians, but owners. So there is this entire, sacred ecology that is built around land. Yeah. Uh, I think Tarkeshwar has a suggestion. He says, please stop sharing the screen. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Is that all right? Yes.
Yeah. Fine. Thank you. Yeah. So here, you see land being depicted as sacred ecology for this community, and it kind of contrasts with the extractive logic of capitalism, which comes with modernity. And also, I think there are there are layers, you can say three layers of sovereignty in the film. You have, the Deva representing divine sovereignty, and the king, human, and the forest showing ecological sovereignty. And the state appropriation of land then comes into conflict with the indigenous idea of spiritual ownership of land. So I found this kind of differing worldviews and clash with between spirituality on the one hand and modernity on the other hand as central to the film, and also very interesting to the film. And of course, you're absolutely right in talking about, myth, and how myth is actually embodied in these rituals. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Geeta ma'am. Nikhila ma'am, you have any comment or any discussion?
Thanks so much, Dr. Emelia. It was really wonderful listening to you.
Ma'am, you can call me Emelia.
So it was wonderful listening to you. First, because there is such a wonderful contextualization of this film. So when Rubaya told us that Kantara would be discussed, I had seen the first part, the first film. This is a prequel to it. I had not had the courage actually to go on to watch this film till we had to watch it for this discussion. And I'm so glad that not only did I watch the film, but I heard you make such wonderful sense. This is not just a lesson. This is not just a reading of Kantara, but a lesson to all, the young scholars who have joined here about how to go into the film as a text, how to contextualize it, how to draw theoretical implications from it. I think there are many lessons in your reading, Emelia, from the way you approach this film. My sense of the film was, I had watched Kantara 1, and I was seeing it in terms of the conflict between, the state on the one hand, where it's very clear, the police, because it's set in the modern times, the police, and then the community, the indigenous community, which is, seen as in some ways as people who are inimical to the interest of the forest and have to be evacuated. And then there is the exploitative landlord. So within this framework, Kantara, I had understood and I had responded to Kantara 1. This is in some ways, chapter 1 is a in very minor ways it is a continuation of that, but also as you rightly pointed out, there's a whole architecture of mythology and the world of the Kshudra Devatas, the smaller, lesser deities, but there is also, I would like to read it. I don't know, whether you would agree with me, but I would also see it as the tension between these little deities and their appropriation, Brahminization, acculturation, all those aspects. Of course, the overall architecture is so massive, you can completely miss out some of these elements, in the awe-inspiring architecture on which the whole film is mounted. Like, it's a part Bahubali, part other epic films. But I thought this Kantara, I mean, really, I was hoping that the person who introduces the film today will do justice to a film like this, and you did more than that. So I'm so glad that we were able to watch this film and listen to you speak about it. It's a film, as you said, that opens out so many elements and layers. The politics of the settled landed community, the probably people who had trade, and then there are these forest dwellers who are not civilized, but who through trade realize that they can probably bypass this king, this Samanta, and carry out the trade. But then it's not just that; it leaps to another level altogether. And I thought that's what is very interesting, how you are connecting it to the non-human, the perspective which is not necessarily human, the fusing of all these many aspects, the human and the non-human, this world of the spirits, and so on. Thanks so much, Emelia, for this wonderful discussion, and thanks to Rubaya for introducing you to us on TFO. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks a lot. But I think we should all watch that documentary. It's wonderful, and I think that will give us a lot of insight into the film, because I think he talks about that this is one Danta Katha, and then there will probably be many more Danta Kathas coming in, and that would really kind of there will be an opening up of all these Danta Kathas, and I guess we will be going back to our indigenous roots, and this is just one place, that is the Tulu culture, and there are so many other cultures, and especially the fact that the language used is Kannada, and that gives it an essence. So that is very, very important, that you bring in indigenous stories through the language. And of course, it would have been, the Tulu language itself is so very rich. So, that I think, so we can, look forward to many more Danta Kathas, to come.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the discussion. May I ask others to please open their mic and with their questions or comments on this film if they have any. I think Pallavi ma'am wants to say something. Ma'am, you are free to.
Yeah, thank you for this very thought-provoking presentation. Kantara is a film that I'm very interested in because I grew up in Tamil Nadu. I grew up in the Udupi Mangalore region, and in my many visits, I'm in the US now. So in my many visits back in the past few years, my parents have been living there for a long time. This film has had very polarizing responses from within the Bunt community, which is represented in the film. Some Bunt subcastes are they see this film as commercializing some rituals that are deeply sacred. And so I guess a question that I think I would like all of us to ponder is, you talked about the ways in which the Bhutakola rituals are like a field of intensities with how the Daiva possesses the Daiva Patri's body. There is something extremely communitarian about that ritual, right? In the sense that I think Dillers and Guattari might probably appreciate in how it releases a sense of relationality amongst people in the community and the ways in which it embodies a certain, relationship to nature or deities and so on and so forth. What happens when we convert that into a filmic spectacle where the audience is now more passive, the community, quote unquote community, is now far beyond the actual community that practices these rituals, but other people are invited, right, to witness or consume this ritual as a spectacle. And I think as a capitalist spectacle, I mean, the film made an enormous amount of money, and there is a lot of debate in, even in Hindi cinema started paying attention to Kantara because of what a massive hit it was financially. And I think that there is some criticism about the you can say there is an appropriation of culture here for very commercial ends. And I think that Rishabh Shetty is being called out for that from within his community. But I also think the other materialist side of me does want to see this through the lens of land relations, which is very contested right now in South Karnataka, South Canara, where there is, like everywhere else, a drive towards development and industrialization that involves deforestation on a mass scale, the disruption of indigenous communities, and of course the presence of Hindutva groups that are trying to Brahmanize this religion, as Nikhila ma'am said, in a way that the song Varaha Rupam goes very contradictorily against what Dr. Purushottam Bilimale is saying, right? Which is that there is an implication here that these devas are actually Vedic avatars of Vishnu and so on. And I think you raised that question in your last slide, which is what happens when the Trinity suddenly appears in this in the landscape of Bhutas. This, I think, correlates a lot to the saffronization of the region as well. There are overlaps here in how the film comes at a time when the faiths are themselves grappling with what it means to have very dominant Hindu ideas permeating society, and there is a lot of cultural capital in identifying as Hindu politically and socially. And I'm interested in the film particularly from that lens. That is I'm trained in political economy of film and media, so I come from that lens. But I do think there is something about the spectacularity of that. Even linguistically, there was a Tulu version of the film that played in South Canada theaters, by the way. When I went there was a Tulu screening alongside Kannada screenings. So Rishabh Shetty knows his audience. He is but the Tulu version is interestingly dubbed. The film was shot in Kannada, so you can clearly make out that difference as well. So and Tulu has long also been fighting for recognition as a formal language within Karnataka as a state. So there are those tensions as well. I think that the film is able to bring to the surface that I think are very rich in terms of image, language, sound, spectacle, all of those things. So thank you for this discussion. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Pallavi, for bringing in those points. I was a bit, skeptical, but then I said, let me have a go at it. Let me just put it at least as questions. Thank you so much, Pallavi.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Pallavi, ma'am. Thank you, Emelia, ma'am. Is there anyone else who wants to add anything to this ongoing discussion? Any new take or comment?
Can I step in?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Yeah, sorry, my throat is not that great actually, but a wonderful, presentation actually, and how we can see this movie in a totally different way. But it's a very insightful presentation actually. But I'm a little bit curious to know, how do you read Kantara's representation of indigeneity and forest cosmology in relation to contemporary environmental justice debates, what we have? Do you think the film meaningfully foregrounds, community custodianship over land, or does it risk, mythologizing Adivasi relationships with nature in ways that dilute present-day political struggles over forest rights? That is one. And also I'm interested in the film's construction of a ritual masculinity. How should we interpret the protagonist's spiritual position as a source of political authority? Does Kantara challenge dominant masculinities through sacred embodiment, or does it ultimately reinforce a heroic or hyper masculine savior figure, rooted in caste, feudal, and power structures? So I want your,
I think Pallavi will give a very good analysis on that, because it does follow all the norms that it has to follow to make it a commercial success, right, Pallavi?
Yes, yes, and I also feel like as a feminist critique, the film is very hyper masculine, and the romance is very problematically depicted. At many points, he's actually harassing her before she falls in love with him. So my feminist sensibilities are very active in this reading as well.
I guess the
I mean,
box office hit itself shows what it aims to do, and it has done it successfully. And very sadly, the myth overrules, and
And I
we
think
take it as
partially this is the larger landscape of mythic filmmaking right now,
the.
which is the hyper masculinization, the ways in which the superhero sort of figure has to, defeat an evil landlord. That is now in Telugu cinema, that is now in Tamil cinema, it is definitely in Kannada cinema. There are larger trajectories of Kannada cinema here as well, I think. But what is interesting, and my again interest in production culture, is how the certain landlord, worker peasant dynamics were often through Rajkumar, the actor, and Vokalika communities. And I feel like Kantara has shifted that onus to Bunt communities, and there is a little bit of a caste struggle happening in the film industry as well that I see reflected amongst the Shetty brothers. All of them are now coming up, and South Canara as a space of representation versus the Heartland Karnataka. There's a lot to say about all of those. I mean, I like the film because it's so rich. It opens up all of these lines of questioning, right? It's great to ask things about caste, gender, language, region, intra Karnataka sort of context within Kantara as well. All of those are opened up and we can discuss it. I mean, I've had many a furious discussion in these past few years about Kantara and its value for Kannada cinema writ large, I think, which are interesting to sort of, poke into.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else with further questions or further comments on this film or on the ongoing discussion? Tarakeswar sir, you have any comment to add on? Sridhar sir, you have anything to add on to this ongoing discussion? Is there anyone else who wants to add on anything on this film or on this discussion?
Can I speak?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Yeah, thank you for a wonderful presentation, ma'am. This is not really a question, but I would like to have your observation on this. Assuming that you have watched the previous movie Kantara, if you are to draw some comparisons between the previous movie and this one, what would be your insights? Because personally speaking, I felt that the previous movie was much simpler, and it had a very direct approach. And even when we watched the scenes of the trance, it left a space for wider interpretations. It didn't rigidly fixate any meaning, and still held a kind of space where we could accommodate faith. And it didn't compel the audience to think towards a particular direction. And yeah, for the people watching a movie, it resonated different things like faith and other things. But the climax in this movie, especially, it stretches the cinematic scope into two main things. Like there is history, there is mythology, there's black magic and caste system, everything. So and also this combination of Shakti and Shiva energy. I felt that it's a kind of the deliberate induction of the feminine in order to increase the fan base, probably, because now the women also will cheer for the movie. So what would be your answers for these things, ma'am?
I don't know about answers because naturally, from one success, you're moving on to a larger success. So you are trying to possibly bring in more elements, make it more complex, make it at see that it is at a larger scale. You that's how it has moved on to a larger canvas with more complications. So the simplicity of the first movie, definitely, as you pointed out, is lost. And because of that, you have too many things, too many questions that one can ask. Uh, and of course, all these questions are not simplistic because your canvas has enlarged to put in so many things. It is cinematically appealing. It has made the mullah that it has to make. Of course, uh, it has its plus points also. But what you said about the simplicity of the first movie, I would definitely agree with that it has been lost. And yeah, it is a film made for the audiences. So keeping that in mind, I think the dynamics have changed. Yes, Pallavi?
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have any more question or comment before we close today? Any new take or any new Tarkesh sir, you want to comment anything?
Yeah, if there's no one else, I thought I will come
Yes,
in.
sir. Please, sir.
Because there were a lot of questions and it was a good presentation rather than a good reading, I would say, of the movie. Why I'm saying it is a reading is you are bringing the current theoretical underpinnings of post-humanism into it. Of course, the narrative lends itself to it. That is one way of reading it. The other way of reading it is to place it in the context of its production. Uh, some people have already hinted at it. Uh, so, what is happening at the larger level uh, in terms of the discourses, how those discourses come into uh, the making of the movie. Uh, so it's a interesting take in that sense. How do we unpack through this movie? What are the current discourses that are shaping the narrative? Number one, number two, and how the movie is trying to maneuver these discourses within its narrative space. So in that sense, it's quite interesting. I had not watched this movie, though I had watched the first movie twice. Uh, Second movie, I didn't watch it because the response within Karnataka was not overwhelming compared to the first one. Because some of the things that have been tried in the second one has already been tried in the first one. So the what novelty it had in the beginning in the first movie, it was last year. So that could be one. And the second, as others have pointed out, about whether inviting the deity to come on the body as a kind of uh, process. Uh, it cannot be done for the uh, performance on screen. Though people have tried to look at Bhutaradhane as uh, performance in academic circles, but generally people don't look at it as a performance. It is inviting the deity, and there is a process to it. A particular body is chosen, and the body has to undergo certain uh, rituals. Uh, they have to give up certain things. And Rishab Shetty also tried to say, after the controversy erupted, that I also went through this process in a way. I had also given up eating meat and things like that. So that's why I didn't watch this movie, because the response was not so there. But this conflict between the forest, which is supposed to be autonomous and sovereign in terms of the tribals, and then the other communities, quote unquote, which have moved out of the forest and into settled agriculture. That conflict was quite interesting, and that continues even in this second movie. But here there is an added uh, layer to it in terms of the historicity of it, quote unquote. But we can also unpack it, and the historicity. I'm using the word quote unquote because there's a Kadamba ruler, and then these are the Samantas of the Kadamba ruler, and then the forest is also there. Uh, Interestingly, there is no comment on the Kadamba ruler. Only on this particular Samanta ruler there is a comment. In fact, the narrative moves in such a way that the Samanta ruler is also exonerated as a state, as a monarchy. Only the this son who takes on the father is faulted because he's not uh, discharging his duties as a quote unquote true monarch. So the blame is on the individual rather than on the monarchy itself. And then the monarchy is exonerated, and then it slips into a conflict between two tribal groups. Uh, the king, the older king, also becomes a kind of pawn in the hands of the other group because that his daughter has come from or is influenced by the other tribal group. So it boils down to a kind of conflict between two tribal groups, and the monarchy is exonerated. And the trade, there's no critique of the trade at all. In fact, this tribal group too wants to have its uh, insertion itself into this capitalist, if you're trying to call it as capitalist mode, into that. That they also want to have access to the port, and they also want to sell other things. Otherwise, the tribal community was living on the forest produce, not into agriculture. Now they're shifting to agriculture. Earlier, the excess production or excess collection from the forest produce was kept outside the boundaries so that anybody could use it. They were not using it or selling it. So in that sense, there was a certain kind of connection between the forest, Daiva, and the community. They were consuming only those things which were necessary for them. Other things were kept out of the boundary, anybody could use it. Now they're interested in selling it. And now they're interested in producing it as agricultural community. So in that sense, what is happening there is actually uh, moving into yet, a certain kind of anthropocentric uh, culture. So they're abandoning the quote unquote the sovereign tribal culture and are entering into the anthropocentric culture where they're exploiting the nature not for their sustenance, for what they think as development. And the monarchy is actually a kind of model that they would like to emulate, uh, the monarchy. So in that sense, it's quite interesting. And then the subtitles were also quite interesting. The word that the tribals use for the uh, god is one thing, and then it always used to get translated as Shiva, Parvati, Ulaya used to become like Shiva. So that was also quite interesting. In fact, it is not happening in the narrative itself. There is a entire history of uh, overlapping of the narratives of these devas, as Bilimale would say. uh, they were actually the heroes of the community. Uh, if you look at these devas, either they would be family devas, only a particular family worships them, or it could be a village deity where the entire village worships it, or it could be a region. Several villages, across villages, people worship a particular deva. So in that sense, as you said in the beginning, they represent a particular aspect. But they were also quasi judicial in nature, as you were saying. They would resolve the disputes. In a way, in the first film, that resolving the dispute by the Deva, when there's a conflict between the uh, two groups who are involved, uh, either not uttering the judgment but taking the punishment in its own hand. That was there. But here, that was quite interesting. It only comes as a kind of protector. Uh, when the community fails to protect itself, it is expecting a hero to come and do it, and it comes and does it. Uh, in that sense, it's slightly disempowering the community, I thought. Uh, uh, so it is quite interesting how uh, the divas were appropriated earlier and how they are getting appropriated through this film narratives now. So in that sense, the movie, both the first and the second raises a lot of issues. And there are two ways in which we can look at the production of this movie. One is, as Pallavi was trying to say, that uh, there is an insertion of the coastal Karnataka into the Kannada film industry. That is happening in a quite big way. But it is not only happening in terms of entry of the people, but also in terms of the content coming in to the Kannada film industry. Otherwise, it was a completely a different kind of thing. Uh, so this content coming in and what it is doing in the context of Pan Karnataka, but they were also not Pan Karnataka movies just because they are made in Kannada, but through the new technologies of subtitling and dubbing, now they're becoming pan-Indian. So in the context of making a movie on the Daivas, which is specific to the coastal Karnataka and Kerala, in Kannada, and then for a pan-Indian audience, uh, what it is doing is something that we need to really unpack. Uh, but all these things are not to suggest that your reading of the movie was not excellent. It was quite interesting too, but it also raises several issues. Um, Thank you for the discussion, and thank you.
Yes, I totally agree with that, and yeah, and in fact, there are so many things that one needs to ask. I mean, there are so many questions, there are so many ways of looking at it, and especially the kind of uh, so many topics that have been catered to needs to kind of be looked into. Yeah, thank you, sir, so much for that.
Thank you, Tarakesh sir. Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone comment and question? Nagaragare Ramesh sir, you want to ask anything or make any comment? Um, um, is there any more comment or question? We have one question in the chat box. Is by Sharmishta Das ma'am. The question goes as, does chapter 1 effectively handle the theme of oppression and marginalized communities compared to its predecessor? Ma'am, Emelia ma'am, do you want to make any comment on this question?
Um, well, both I think are quite different in their approach, uh, and I feel though they have picked up the theme of oppression and the marginalized communities, in chapter one, though technically it seems to be that the marginalized community has won the game, but I really have a doubt whether they have actually effectively put forth the problems of the marginalized in a nuanced manner. I think there are a lot of problems to this, and probably uh, I don't think it has actually effectively handled the themes of oppression and marginalized uh, as in comparison to the earlier one. I mean, this is my personal take.
Thank you, ma'am. There is one observation by Pallavi ma'am. Ma'am, do you want me to read this out? It is related to what Tarakesh sir was saying. To the film. Okay, okay. So do we have any more comment or question regarding this film before we close for today? Any new take? I Is there anyone who? Okay, okay. I think this is for today. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining today's discussion. Now, on the verge of closing today's session, I want to convey my warm regards and deep appreciation to everyone present here. And on behalf of TFO, I want to thank Emelia ma'am for making Tuesdays evening so enriching and deeply rooted in our love for cinema. I also want to thank Geeta ma'am and Nikhila ma'am and my fellow co-interns for making this community so active and running. So until we meet again next Saturday, good night for today. Thank you and see you again.
Thank you.
Good
Good night,
night. Thank you.
everyone.
Thank
Good
you
night.
very much, Amelia. Thank you,
Thank you very much,
Pallavi.
Dr.
Bye.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Bye.
yeah. Thank you, everyone.